just start a little background about how this sort of happened, that I traveled for, it was the summer of '65. There was just the free speech movement in Berkeley, and there was a lot of, the classes were canceled, and it was so exciting. But once I was over in Europe on one of those, $100 return trip charter flights, I thought, well, gosh, do I really want to rush back? And maybe the classes are canceled. And so I just sort of bravely tore up the ticket. And then I started to just extend my stay. I'll just, stay another month, or, okay, go back to London for the winter. All right, cross North Africa. And so it was actually a year later that I met some people that had traveled overland to India, and I'd never even thought of that. But on a student budget, it was affordable, especially if you hitchhike. There's not too many costs there. And I was 18 or so off I went with my boyfriend. So May 1967, Almora. I'm adapting to mountain life quite well. Aside from a water shortage, which means I must hire a boy to carry buckets up the mountain to the cottage, cooking is quite manageable. Since there isn't any form of transportation, not even horses for hire, I've grown accustomed to walking the 2 miles from our bungalow into town twice a week. The other day, we walked 6 miles to visit Anagarika Govinda, the German scholar and Tibet traveler. I just finished his book, Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism. He has a brilliant mind and the verbal skills to lucidly express himself. One of his theories is that if philosophical concepts are produced diagrammatically or in a geometric context, they stand a good chance of being true or universal. So I immediately like the visual aspect, kind of like yantras and meditation, diagrams. Even Albrecht Dürer in the 16th century printed a magic circle in one of his prints, and so I started getting interested. I saw them on the door of Hindu temple. Lama Govinda has a profound knowledge of the Tantras. Perhaps you're familiar with Timothy Leary's Psychedelic Experience or Evan Wentz's Tibetan Book of the Dead. Lama Govinda wrote forewords to both books. An interesting coincidence is that Leary wrote his book of poems, Psychedelic Prayers, when he lived in the cottage where we now live. It's a peaceful home and a good place to write and read, although last week I was baffled by loud thumps followed by noisy footsteps across the tin roof. We went outdoors to investigate, nothing. The next afternoon, the same thump followed by scampering. This time, I noticed a small animal leap off a tall pine tree and coast or float down to our roof. My first sighting of a flying squirrel, or more accurately, a gliding squirrel. The atmosphere in Almora is certainly conducive to meditation. The peace and solitude of the forests, the surrounding snow-capped Himalayas, the river Kosi, far below, winding a path through the valley. Consequently, I've been doing a lot of reading and quiet study, which is the only way to begin to understand mysticism, yoga, the tantras, and meditation. Travel is exhilarating. So many experiences, so many things to see, interpret, and respond to. Every traveler has unique experiences. My ideal way to travel is to lessen as much as possible the barriers that separate me from the local people. I strive to integrate as much as possible. In other words, I gladly sacrifice comforts and customs in order to learn another way of life. Person to person, culture to culture, I learn by living. I don't plan to starve from thirst or die from thirst, but I do wear Indian dress, eat Indian food, speak Tibetan and Hindi a little, and generally accept local customs like not eating meat or drinking alcohol. The water shortage is acute. A few natural springs have dried up for the first time since this area has been inhabited. The monsoons will alleviate the rising temperatures. Hopefully only 5 more weeks until the deluge, although precise arrival time is always a matter of speculation. The month of August seems particularly fortuitous. Last week, with the encouragement of Ram Dass, Keith and I made a pilgrimage to the Amarnath cave located in a glacial area of northern Kashmir near the border with Tibet. The ancient holy cave is an abode of Shiva. What's so unique about this particular cave is the enormous lingam, phallus statue, naturally formed out of ice. The ice phallus rises and falls as the moon waxes and wanes. That is, on the full moon, the ice sculpture reaches a height of 6 feet. The entire pilgrimage is 60 miles, and the highest point is 15,000 feet. Utterly fantastic to see the glacial origins of the large rivers, the primeval snowy beauty and wilderness, nature totally uninhabited by man. So that really was an incredible pilgrimage. It's only open the month of August because it's such a high altitude, the passes are hard to cross. And so when it's just before the full moon, thousands of Hindu pilgrims make this pilgrimage. And we were a week early because we didn't have the reservations. You know, these are booked like years in advance. And so we made friends with some of the Muslim outfitters who rented pack mules and set up tents along the way. So they, let us stay low student rate, whereas for the Hindus, they jacked up the high tourist season rates in the following week. We just, this is Niranjani Akara, which is an ashram on the banks of the Ganges, where we're right behind a temple, and to get to the Ganges, we would walk across the courtyard and down this dark corridor and open this medieval door. But the key was like, this iron key about that long. But then we had our own private ghat, and I used to go and bathe every morning, I guess. Bathing in that sense is you just sort of dunk, fully dressed, modesty.